I thought we got he just wants so it's interesting.
Well, that's good. And here it was kind of started cycling over.
You know, it's between me and you, the reality of that.
And he said,
nobody ever said anything that's possible.
You mean like this campaign, I think the people really like him. I really like him. I just have big question marks about what's happening with the country and what he's going to do in the second term. It's going to be better than what he did in the first term. And it doesn't seem like a lot of those issues are being debated. A lot of it comes down to who you like better, which I guess is the case with a lot of campaigns.
at the end,
My lawyer said,
Station them there. Where's the
at Rick Steiner. You know, he just,
and nobody checks.
I do here too, and I think that he's a great family man. I think the relationship he has with his wife and his daughter, she doesn't even know any of that. I think that he's really sincere as far as wanting to.
So we're going to be, under the old business, we'll continue that, and then we should move that up before.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, we talked about it last meeting, and we talked to you, so you can't keep having career costs. If there's another continuance cost of that.
Right, what is he going to do?
So it's a great
experience. What's funny is that you can figure out what's wrong with it. I think we ought to never getting problems with it, but for whatever reason, at the time that you wanted to work, especially the camera feature, it wasn't working. And so the blade recorder who was there took a picture of Dale with a farm on it. And then Dale sent that picture to me and my son Matt, who was at school in Washington. And my son's response to it was, Uncle Dale sent me a gag picture because there was a cut.
We can make a ruling on it from here, they don't have to.
So Uncle Dale sent me a gag picture.
I mean, it's just a cost.
I think I even had it here.
I guess we should maybe just say,
Well, I guess that's what we should do.
okay, so we start. Okay. We'll defer that to you, but we're going to say that we do.
Yes, I do.
I guess let it know.
But anyway, it's great because I'm at his hand on Dale's shoulder.
This one. That's
right.
He said he was going to mention your name. I didn't talk to him. Okay. We got it. Again? Sign back in school?
Summer.
Easy. Okay, good evening. Sweeney Township Board of Zoning Appeals hearing is now in session. Can we have the roll, please?
Mr. Hilbert?
Yes.
Mr. Emsch?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Boland?
Yes.
Mr. Saber?
Yes.
And can we have a motion to approve the minutes? I believe we now have one from July and August.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Boland?
Yes.
Mr. Hilbert?
Yes.
Mr. Emsch?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
And so today we do have a full board. So the alternate will be serving as the alternate today. Just want to make sure you know that, since we have everybody here. Mr. Sable, you'll be acting as the alternate today?
Alternate,
Yeah,
yes.
okay. Okay, First old business we have is the variance request to add a drive-through and modify the existing screening on the property at 7115 West Central Avenue by Jerry Parker, agent for Shamir, which has been continued. It was continued June to July, July to August, and now it's being continued again. It's being asked to be continued till October. And so we have that before the board. I don't know that we so much have an issue, but I think there is some concern we'd like to express to your department about. There's ongoing costs to the township of advertising and so forth, and I think that there should be, my recommendation would be a limit put on this, and that they should be incurring some of these at this point. I don't know if anybody else has a comment or a thought on that.
I mean, I would agree, sooner or later, they either got to come here or they need to pull this from the agenda. And I don't know if it's been 4 months now, is 6 months too much, is 4 months too much?
All right.
Township needs to resolve that, I think.
Mr. Hayes?
How many people if you want to raise your hand, are here for this tonight?
For which?
For the Central Avenue in Panera, so nobody's here for that. All right.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to continue that?
I believe we do.
I'd like to move that we continue the variance request for the drive-in and modification of existing screening on the property located at 7115 Central Avenue.
I'll second.
Mr. Hubbard?
Yes.
Mr. Emch?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Boland?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We are on to new business. We're going to switch the order. What we're going to take first, the variance request for a reduction in the height and front setback for the property located at 2727 Holland, Sylvania. Agent for Huntington Field Properties. This is the sign matter, and there's been a request to have it continued. So I do believe there's some people here about that matter, and so, no? Okay, I guess I thought there was. But if there isn't, that's fine. That's going to be continued, so we don't have to have anybody that was here for that wait through that matter. But let's, I guess we'll make a motion. Is there a motion to have it continued?
I make a motion. Go ahead.
Take your pick. I think Mr. Boland had it. Do I have a second?
Who made the motion?
Mr. Boland.
Mr. Boland?
I'll second.
Mr. Hubbard?
Yes.
Mr. Emch?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Boland?
Yes.
Okay. We have one other matter, new business. It is a variance request to provide shared parking of a non-adjacent parcel, an exception to Sylvania Township being a third party to the parking agreement for the property located at 5965 Renaissance Place by John Porterfield of Porterfield Properties property owner. Carol, can we please get your report?
Sure. The owner of the office condominium building at 5965 Renaissance Place has requested a variance to section 2907 that requires shared parking to be adjacent to the property using the parking spaces. In this instance, the owner is able to lease 8 parking spaces from the owner of the property at 6049 Renaissance Place, which is non-adjacent and approximately 350 feet away. Per the advice and recommendation from the Township Council, an exception to Sylvania Township being a third party to the lease agreement has also been requested. Staff recommends approval of both requests. Planning and zoning staff supports the variance and exception request and is recommending they be approved. Allowing the owner to lease the off-site parking spaces will enable the lower floor of his building to be utilized for a small billing business. Without the additional spaces, his existing parking area will not accommodate the required spaces to utilize the lower floor for the business. Regarding the exception to leave Sylvania Township out of the lease agreement, the staff suggests following the recommendation of council. There is no benefit to the township being a third party to the agreement, and it could lead to other legal issues in the future. That portion of section 2907 should be deleted as additional amendments to the zoning resolution take place. An approval of the variance should be for a one-year period, subject to additional one-year approvals by the zoning manager upon receipt of an executed lease renewal.
Okay, any comments from the board, questions?
I drove by there and thank you for that. I look at that and I'm assuming, you know, if that parking lot gets full, where'd you go? Personally, I can't imagine if I was an employee that I'd walk all the way down that corner in the middle of winter. I don't think that's gonna happen. And I'm just afraid we're gonna wind up with parking lot wars and people fighting over spots. I mean, am I missing something, or, and when I drove through today, there was a few empty spots in there. I don't know if that was peak time or if that's high or low. So I'm struggling having been that far away. I just can't imagine it's really gonna be utilized. I mean, I would think if I was coming to that section and there's a parking spot in there, even if there's only one, I'd take it, or if there wasn't, I'd go to the next one, or when I went by today, there were people parking in the street. Somebody said, well, they're going to be utilized, or are we just covering our ordinance?
Well, that would be up to the property owner and the individual tenants in that building to enforce that their employees park at the other lot.
This parking lot goes with this
How
building?
are we going to enforce that?
Hang on 1 second, hang on, we'll let you talk in just 1 second. So that 6949 Renaissance, that's that building?
This would be the adjacent building?
Correct.
Right.
So then there's this building, and then there's that building where he has
Oh,
space.
there it is,
Yeah.
okay.
That's
So that's actually 2 over. That's what I couldn't, okay.
3 over.
Well,
Yeah.
1, 2. Adjacent would be 1, so I guess going 2 away from the adjacent. So I looked, okay.
I guess that's my concern. I don't know, maybe there's a slew of parking spots there every day open and it makes no difference, but I only drove through once. Wasn't a couple in there, but
Is 1649 occupied, do we know?
Not fully, there's some vacant space in there, at least it appeared that way.
Okay, so they have,
Every time I drove by there, there was maybe 3 or 4 cars in that entire
oh
lot.
yeah.
So there's room to
And this one down there, you're right,
Right,
that's
right.
looked empty, but that's a long ways away, particularly I say with winter coming.
okay. Any other comments?
I have a question. Under the zoning resolution in 2907, it does talk about the 3-party agreement between the township and the owners, that it shall be required and subject to approval by the township legal counsel. Are we being asked to have an exception to that, so that the township will not be
That's
a
correct.
party
That's
to the
for-
agreement? Can we even make that exception under the zoning resolution where it says it's required? And I know that there are changes now with the zoning resolution going forward, but
Well, John Burrell and I had that discussion, and he thought it would probably be the right thing to do, whether or not it's past legal muster, you know, I guess only a judge would decide that. But he felt that the township in no way, shape, or form should be a party to this agreement, and have liability to enforce it or any responsibility of any of the terms of the contract.
That's
Probably good legal advice.
so something we should be thinking about in our code. For change.
do you know the history of that? Where the township would have to be a party to the agreement for, I would think, for enforcement purposes?
Well, you know, I think we certainly should be written in as a review and approval of the contract, make sure it's correct in its form and its execution, but as to being part of a third party to the contract where we would have responsibilities to enforce provisions, absolutely not.
And we would still have, the township would still have authority over it just because it's a variance that is being granted by our board. All right.
Isn't that typically what you would see, that the township would see the agreement and be able to prove that it exists, but not necessarily be a party to it? So that's a little, seems to be a bit severe.
Another thing, Chris, we're talking about an annual and that would be renewed based on the lease being renewed, but do we really think a year from now, if the lease isn't renewed, They vacate the basement and move the business someplace else?
I think they'd be legally binding too. You know, I don't know that we have much of a choice. The agreement's only good for 1 year.
Yeah.
You know, what else are you gonna do?
I have a question. Was this building what are the other, I didn't realize these buildings had basements now.
This is probably one of the few buildings that does.
So does all these other businesses in there utilize the basements?
I don't think they have the basements. I think this is one of the,
The building itself?
right, this, Mr. Porterfield's building does have the lower floor basement. But I don't think there are many other,
Well, do they have that as an occupancy?
they have no occupancy of that right now because they can't get a zoning certificate because they don't have the required parking to meet the zoning resolution. So right now, it's vacant. There's nothing down there.
I mean, there's no fire access? Have you looked
Well,
at
no,
it?
yeah, I've been down there. There is access from the lower level to the rear of the building. There's actually 2 points of ingress egress.
I'm just asking.
Right, and his portion is finished off for, you know, Class A office spaces.
It's in the basement, okay.
Okay.
It's light, it's airy.
I mean, I'm just wondering,
Right.
What about-
That was all done without permits. That's what kind of got him to the situation he's in today.
oh, it's never been, it doesn't have an occupancy. Are they using it as an occupancy?
When I was down there, it was not occupied.
Okay, what if I'm the person next door, all right, and my customer comes in and there's no parking lot, no parking space, because nobody wanted to park way over there?
Absolutely.
So I'm out there, you know, being parking lot
Police.
attendant. I don't, I question some of these things. That was just a question.
I have a question. So you're telling me the work is all done down there? It's all been done without a permit?
Correct.
And now they're down there trying to get a permit. They want to start here to get a permit.
That's correct.
Okay.
You know how many,
If this were approved, are there going to be signs saying that business A, you're going to be parking here? Or is each business going to have to put signs up that saying parking for so-and-so only? And in the event that someone says, well, I'm not going to park all the way down here, I'm going to go ahead and park here, they can get towed, which would, seems like the only thing that can be done is to identify the parking spaces for a business.
That'll get messy in a hurry.
Please?
That'd get messy in a hurry.
If they were approved, that might be a good idea to do that, because then the people will be bound to put up these parking places for business A, people for business B, others will be towed. We park down in the end down here just like they're asking for. And I suppose what bothers me about Board of Zoning Appeals is to break the law, get caught, come in here and ask for approval. That's what bothers me about things like this.
any other comments from the board? If not, is there anybody here that would like to speak on behalf of this matter? You know what, and I did not do a swearing in, I apologize. Let's do this real quickly. Anybody who's going to possibly speak, please raise your right hand. And do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth to the best of your knowledge? Thank you. Okay, if there's anyone here who would like to speak on behalf of this matter, I'm going to ask you to state your name and then sign in. And everybody, you'll both get a chance. So go ahead.
Gentlemen, good evening. My name is Jerry Summer. I'm an attorney, acting as agent tonight for Porterfield Properties as capital. I have a couple remarks that I'd like to make about our application, and then I'd like to respond to some of the questions that were asked by the board. So as you know from looking at our materials, we are seeking a variance to permit some off-site, non-adjacent parking to service this finished basement area in the property at 5965 Renaissance. We are not asking for a variance in the number of required parking spaces. We'll put in and have secured through lease the full complement of spaces that are required for the square footage that's been approved. But we're asking to have that parking off-site. There is incredible history on this lot, and we could spend a good couple hours explaining how we got to this position today. And a comment by one of you about, doing something and coming in late. Boy, there's a real good explanation for it. I'll try and be brief about that. Porterfield Properties acquired this property in 2004. And at the time of acquiring this property, as it was being built, there was a discussion with the builder, Rich Troxel of Patriot Builders, who's probably known to most of this community. Mr. Porterfield advised Troxel that we wanted to do the first floor, and this property was spec'd out for a basement. And Mr. Porterfield said, ultimately, we'd do the basement as well. He expressed that as his intention. Mr. Troxel says, no problem at all. Due to budgetary constraints, they only developed the first floor at the time. Porterfield Properties had a tenant for the first floor. That's where the revenue was going to come from, so they didn't build a basement at the time. But Mr. Troxel represented to Mr. Porterfield that in the backyard, behind the building, he had put in drainage footers and storm drains to ultimately take a parking lot in the back of the building. And the expectation was that there would be parking behind the building. Now, interestingly enough, I'm delighted that Dr. Kogut is here tonight because he is a tenant in the adjoining condominium. This particular property has two condominium units. One is occupied by Porterfield Properties, one by Dr. Kogut. He received the same representations from Mr. Troxel at the time that we could put some parking in the back. In fact, there was a time when Mr. Porterfield approached the township and asked for access between the buildings. Actually, he was told by then current administration that he needed a landscape variance to put a drive between the buildings to get to the parking lot in the back. The landscape variance was derailed by administration when there started being big conversation about the fact that you couldn't have parking back there at all. Well, in 2009...
You talking about parking back here?
Yes. There's green space behind the building. And Troxel represented that could all be paved over, and that he had the infrastructure in place to do so. And again, yes, sir.
Excuse me, let me interrupt you a minute.
Please.
That property there is a buffer between the houses back there. Isn't there houses behind there?
There is a housing apartment complex behind it.
Okay.
We well understand you can't, but as a purchaser, when the builder was saying it was no problem, that's where we'll put the parking, there wasn't any separate inquiry by the prospective owner about whether that was true or not. He just relied on the builder's representation.
Okay.
We're not asking to go back there tonight for a host of reasons.
Okay.
So in 2009, Mr. Porterfield decided to relocate his own business into the lower level of the building. So he wasn't renting someone else's property, he could live in his own. And he talked to Mr. Troxel again, Patriot Properties, who said, great idea, I can build out that basement for you, we can spec it out, we'll build it. And again, the question was asked, parking? No problem, we're going to put parking in the back. So the work was undertaken. The real interesting story, and it's sort of tangential to what's going on here, but the real interesting part of the story is that entire process, Mr. Troxel did not pull any permits. He did all that work under the table. Mr. Porterfield made due inquiry several times about, do we have permits, is everything jake, are we getting all the right inspections, because there were certainly permits pulled when the building was built in 2004. Mr. Porterfield even consulted me as his counsel at the time, because he's worried that Troxel kept saying, you don't need permits, you don't need permits. I looked at the ordinance and assured Mr. Porterfield that he did, but Mr. Troxel proceeded. Again, a bit tangential, but stay with me just another minute. Because all this has happened, we've got this improved space that was built with no permits, so we have no valid inspections, so we don't have an occupancy permit. Mr. Porterfield sued Mr. Troxel in 2009 for breach of contract, breach of warranty, and fraud. There were express representations made, as I did that project, and also relate to a repair that a parking lot would be built in the back, and that's how it was going to go. He misled, he misrepresented, not sure what he did. But Mr. Porterfield sued him for the dilemma that he found himself in. To include the cost of construction, but also the lost revenue that he was going to have when he stopped renting someplace else and lived in his own space. And that's a quantified number. Including in the lawsuit, there were express allegations of fraud. Some of the purchase orders were forged by Mr. Troxel. He cut signature lines off the page and recopied it. Troxel ultimately settled. He didn't want to take the thing to court after we got through depositions. He made a settlement with Mr. Porterfield. But that doesn't get Mr. Porterfield in his basement. He still has improved space with no occupancy permit because the process wasn't followed. We're not trying to proceed through everything and come in at the last minute to fix it. We are trying to fix it. There are a bunch of mistakes. There's a bunch of misadventure here. We think this is fixable. If we can get a variance tonight to address the parking issues, the township can issue a permit. And with the permit, we can go out and get all the inspections that are required and see if we can occupy the space. And those inspections will produce what they'll produce. If the improvements were done correctly, we'll get appropriate inspections and passes. If they weren't done correctly, Mr. Porterfield, I guess, can have a choice of making whatever corrections are necessary to satisfy all the inspections, or he can surrender the idea of occupying the space. But until we can get the parking addressed, we can't go address all of the issues that, frankly, Mr. Troxel failed to address and failed to, in good conscience, shepherd Mr. Porterfield through during the process. Our request tonight doesn't exactly fit the code. I mean, you must know this. We're asking for parking spaces 2 spots down the road. We don't have a technical 2907 adjacent multi-site shared parking arrangement. But what we are trying to do is to get some authority from you folks to make arrangements for our parking spaces so that we can proceed and get the benefits of our parking. Some of the specific questions I'd like to address, because they go to the heart of some of the things you'll make your decision based upon. Mr. Amos asked, will the employees use this? Please understand, again, we've contracted for 8 parking spaces because based on the square footage in the basement that's developed, the code says you need 8 parking spaces. Mr. Porterfield has 3.5 FTE employees. It's a small medical building company. He has 3 full-time and 1 part-time person that work for his company. Will they use it? We believe they will for 2 reasons. Mr. Porterfield owns the building, and he owns the company and the employees that are going to be in the building, and he can tell them where to park. The suggestion that someone might get there early and sneak into the parking spot of the main building, Mr. Porterfield is the police on that. If his employees violate this variance and people just start parking willy-nilly, there's going to be some enforcement coming his way, and he's going to be in trouble. I suggest to you he controls the building, he controls the tenant that's going in the basement, he controls those employees. So I don't think it's an issue. Will they walk in the winter? If they want to get to their job, they will. And it's not that bad of a walk. There's a sidewalk, and it's probably for a slow walker, a 3-minute walk. So we don't think that's an issue. Mr. Hellberg, you asked if the property at 6049 is occupied. Indeed it is, and the entirety of that is occupied by RE/MAX. According to the staff's report and also confirmed on the Aries page, there's 6,336 square feet on that entire 6049 Renaissance Place. Specifically, our ordinance on commercial parking mentions real estate offices as needing one parking space for every 400 square feet of space. That means that entire complex needs 16 spaces. It has 35.
6049?
That's right.
Okay.
Which is a surplus of 19 spaces. We're asking to take down 8. So even if we use all 8, which we don't need because we have 3.5 FTEs, there's still ample parking on the space, notwithstanding that it's occupied by a single user. Mr. Esch, you asked the question of a three-party agreement with the county. Both Mr. Nagy and myself separately have talked to John Burrell, the council officer, because in fact, Mr. Burrell's first comment when he saw our lease was, why isn't the township a party to it? We had some dialogue with Mr. Burrell, and Mr. Burrell has two opinions that he's expressed to us. First of all, he thinks it now imprudent if the township be a party, because Burrell and I started talking about, well, then what? Then you're a party, and if there's a slip and fall, someone sues the township. And the township's the deep pocket. So the township is now embroiled in a lawsuit, and the township is going to have some indemnification agreements back and forth. And Burrell said, yeah, what a bad idea. In fact, I think you saw in his report, John, help me if I'm incorrect, but I think he said, and in fact, we're going to change that ordinance entirely and never have them be a party. So he thinks it imprudent to be a party, but since that's on your records right now as an ordinance, we are asking for an exception in that regard. The other question that Burrell spent some time with, he was scratching his head figuratively and thought, can they do that? Was bored. And his opinion was that because you have the authority to grant variances from the ordinance, if the ordinance requires a three-party agreement, that's a variance that you folks can grant. His recommendation is to take the township out and let me proceed. Mr. Amos, you asked another sharp question about what happens if the variance goes. If after a year he doesn't renew the parking, well, then he's in violation of your variance, and there's enforcement provisions in place. Will he get out if your township administration comes and enforces it? He'll have to. I mean, you won't be there with permission anymore. That's the nature of the variance. So I think the question of will he get out, excuse me, it's up to you. If he's not in compliance, make him get out. You'll have that authority. Mr. Hayes asked a question. Another good one. Basements. Yeah, here's the deal. This is a Mercurio development. Joe Mercurio developed almost all of these buildings, and Joe built them all the same way, just as Joe does. No basements. In this particular case, Joe sold this lot to Troxel, and he left Troxel to his own devices to develop the properties he wanted. In fact, there is a condominium association of all these buildings out there, and this particular property is not in the condominium association, again, because Mercurio built his projects without basements and put an association together of all his, but he sliced this entire parcel out and let Troxel build whatever he built. And that's why he built the basement. And frankly, it's because he talked to Porterfield and said, I need some space. And he said, well, we'll build a basement, parking in the back, it's all good. Porterfield is probably a more sophisticated consumer now, but as a businessman who's talking to a builder about building a space, I think he relied to his detriment on the representations. But that's why there's a basement in this one, because it's different than all those Joe. Question was asked, I think this was also you, Mr. Hayes. You said, well, what about customers? So all of a sudden, there's customers pouring into this new billing company. This billing company doesn't have walk-in customers. What they do at this billing company is, excuse me, they do the billing for physicians. Physicians provide their services. They have to get the bills out. Doctors more and more don't like to do that, particularly as it's all now federally required electronic billing. They send their charge slips to Mr. Porterfield's company, and Mr. Porterfield's company correctly codes the services, scrubs the claims to make sure they're supported by the data, and electronically sends the information in. If there's any client interaction, it's either electronic or Mr. Porterfield goes out to the clients. There's just no walk-in traffic. There's 3.5 people coming in to work every day and no customers. So again, the load or the threat of a load on the 5965 is slim to none. Again, we'll make the employees park 3 doors down and the customers don't come in. And that also, Mr. Sabo, I hope addresses your question of are we going to put up signs to say this parking area just for employees of Central Behavioral Health Care or for Sylvania Family Physicians, which are the tenants on the first floor of these properties. Again, not a problem because there's just no customers. Mr. Amos.
You mentioned that outside this building, there's a condominium association with the rest of the units. Are they supportive of this, or where they stand? Have you talked with them? Because my concern is we do something that's going to jeopardize their businesses. It'll be outside.
We don't know. I suspect, I don't know if y'all are going to speak in favor or not, but I guess we're going to hear in a moment. I will tell you that about a year or more ago, Mr. Porterfield went around and asked some of the neighbors if they had space they could share, including Mr. Mercurio, because frankly, we'd rather not be 3 lots down. Nobody in the immediate vicinity would agree to rent out spaces, but Mr. Modine had no problem with it. So I don't know how people feel about it. Again, what we're talking about is introducing 3.5 extra people into this area. Park 3 lots down where whatever traffic there is, even ingress and egress into this building is not going to be impacted by these 3.5 people because their ingress and egress is going to be a 60-49 and then they'll walk down on the sidewalk.
Mr. Summers, is there a reason why it's only a 1-year arrangement?
Well, it's 1 year with 2 one-year options. And what we were trying to do, quite frankly, is not tie up Mr. Modine. He was being generous. He didn't want to tie up his property. In fact, if you look closely at 2907, it also says that the agreement has to run with the land. Any third-party agreement or 3-party agreement regarding parking. And we thought that was an unreasonable request of anybody who was actually extending an accommodation. So our thought was that we'd make it 1-year renewables. Mr. Modine sort of liked a 3-year target. That seemed to work. Our expectation, of course, is parties are always free to renegotiate. And assuming we have a satisfactory relationship, we expect to keep going. If it doesn't, again, if we lose the lease, as Mr. Nagy points out, this variance would be renewable based upon demonstration of the lease. If we lose the lease, we've lost the opportunity. We'll take that chance, as we're pretty sure we're going to be a good neighbor and really not impact the environment at all negatively.
You say Mr. Moline owns 6049, or Remax is in that building?
Mr. Modine is the principal of Remax, or a principal of Remax.
Who owns the building? Moline or Remax?
It's DJM Viking Investments.
Okay. So what happens if they move out? Okay. What if, right? If they move out, and I bring my business in there, and I need them parking spaces, all right? Then, I get the parking places. You lose your parking places, but you still got your business downstairs. Is that when you close it up? Is that the risk you're taking?
We wouldn't fold it up, but we'd have to find
Close it up, I said,
Well, but we'd have to, or find another place.
or go into litigation. Okay.
Or, yeah, well, we've been there, we're not gonna join that.
All right.
But yes, but again, please do understand at the moment, and we know our relationship in the lease is only as good as the current parties, but Mr. Modine is a principal of DJM Investments. I'm sorry, I don't have the name exactly. That's a family trust, and he's the principal family member, so he controls the owner, he controls the business, he controls the spot. So our relationship with Mr. Modine runs through ownership, occupancy,
I understand.
virtual control.
I like to find out who's who, you know, who's doing what.
Understood.
Do we, is there any other questions, Mr. Summers? I have a feeling there's some other folks. Okay.
Go back to this lawsuit, Mr. Porterfield and the builder. Who won?
Well, Mr. Troxel paid money to Mr. Porterfield, and some people consider that a win. Mr. Porterfield does not think he's winning. Mr. Porterfield still thinks he's pretty badly in the hole. But Troxel offered to settle the case so it would not proceed to trial.
Part of the settlement, coming to the zoning department and bringing, building up par with zoning permits?
It is not. There are no conditions on the settlement at all. Mr. Porterfield is left in the same bad position he is today as he was before the settlement. Mr. Porterfield can quantify some numbers for you on how much revenue he believes he's lost in the time he's not been able to occupy his building in terms of rent he's had to pay somewhere else. He was going to consolidate some office function with one of the tenants in the building. He can tell you that he thinks there's about a $1-point-something million savings that he's been hurt on. He didn't get anywhere near that kind of money from Mr. Troxel, and he didn't get occupancy in his building.
So it's still not brought up par with code.
It is not, but if we can get this variance, our next step will be to ask for the permit so we can go get the inspections and get it up to code if it's not. And we don't know that it's not. We know it was done without permits, and we're not pleased about that. But I'll tell you, I think that's not the owner's responsibility to make sure that the builder got all the necessary permits. We're going to go through the permitting process as soon as you'll give us access to parking. And that will produce what it produces. Mr. Porterfield is prepared, if he has to spend more money to bring it up to code. On the other hand, Mr. Troxel has built a number of buildings, and whether he was doing it above board or below board, or on the books or off the books, he knows how to build a building. He knows what the fire codes are. We're hopeful that he's built it according to the specifications, but we'll get the inspectors out from Lucas County, and we'll know that for sure.
Okay, sure.
How many square feet is in the lower level there?
Johnson,
It's John.
Yeah, I think it's 2,400.
And you say there's only going to be 3.5 people working down there in 2,400 square feet?
yeah, and that's a
Well,
problem.
I'm familiar with those type of operations, and, you know, there's one that's located on, over on Burn Road and, maybe Hill, and, you know, that has a lot of people working there, a lot of people. And it takes a lot of people to run that organization. And what I'm concerned is, you know, yeah, you say you're only gonna have 3.5 people now, how do we know your business doesn't take off and all of a sudden you've got 15 people driving it?
I have the suspicion that Mr. Porterfield wants to answer that question.
Okay.
I'm John Scott, Porterfield.
Ask you to sign in, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I worked at this company that was owned by St. Luke's from 88 to 2002, and then bought the assets in 2002. My voice is shot today, so I apologize. So I've been on my own since that time. When I bought it, we had 15 employees, and we had about 40 physician clients. In the last 3 years, with the event of political agreement with healthcare, I've lost 70% of my clients to leave to the clinic, because they have to get on the healthcare platform, like EMR and stuff, which I don't offer, and the clinic offers everything. So, and the tenant upstairs is is a family practice doc, Dr. H, and that's my wife. I lost her too. So I'm in kind of, it's not a growing concern.
For business.
Good point. So I predict that I've got about 4 big clients left, and they're being entertained by the clinic. I was offered a position in the clinic 2 years ago. I took it. I'm an absentee person at the moment. I've got another person running it. My prediction is we probably got 6 months. Okay. And then I've got a business. But to make it more rich, the current landlords kicked me out at the end of September. So I have no place to go. And I'm trying to save 3.5 jobs as long as I can and continue to provide services to the clients and still good clients until they decide what they're going to do. Do I like the way this fell out? No. I was assured that you have to look at something that's public knowledge. You look at the documents and see what our case was. It was solid enough for him to pay me back the construction cost. I did not get the operational cost back. I've lost $75,000 in rent savings. In 3 years I've been stuck out here in the career. We were going to consolidate office managers. I lost $125,000 in that kind of money just to keep it staffed up, and it goes on and on. I've never sued anyone before, but I had to. I had no choice. And I believe I prevailed. But I've got to do something with these 3.5 people. I'd like to keep them gainfully employed. People walk out of my wife's office to the Hungry Eye every day for lunch. It's this right across the street. Anyway, is there anything else I could answer for you?
Yeah, you haven't answered the question. What happens if the business does grow? I mean, you keep saying it's not going to, but if it does, where is the limit, of how many people that you're going to put over there?
I'm under contract with the clinic to sell it or get rid of it for a finite period of time. That does not include that space there. Because it's pretty much all electronic. You can put it anywhere. But, that's not part of it. I was hopeful that it would be leasable space when I built it. That was the whole reason for doing it. I'll give you a case when I had an appraisal when the basement was unfinished. It was appraised at $410,000 in the middle of the worst economy in 30 years. I had it appraised after the build out, $540. I'm going to lose that. There's no way I can get out from underneath it. But the company's not growing.
Well, I guess you still haven't answered the question. The question is, what happens if we grant this variance and, this business, let's say your business goes broke and the building becomes available. Does that mean you're not going to use that lower section anymore? You're not going to rent it anymore because, you're only asking for, a limited amount of time for this?
I'm not limiting it. It's just empty space.
I think the issue here is I can't imagine we're looking to do all of this for a variance for a 6-month time period. That's not really what this board is about, and it's going to follow the use of the space. So, getting to your point, I think that, I have some concern about that. Your specific, not so much your specific situation. We're looking at a use for that space, what the code requires for the parking on that. So if you decide to close up shop, you can reopen, you can put someone else in there, and there's an agreement in place that, that's going to carry on. And there is some concern, and I have a bit of concern about a 1-year deal, about us policing that after 1 year. It's also something, these agreements are done all the time, but a lot of times they're done via easement form, something a little more permanent than, we'll give this a shot for a year and see what happens.
But if you please, gentlemen, for 2,400 square feet of improved space, 8 parking lots are required. As long as there are 8 parking spaces supplied, there's no offense to the ordinance. 8 is what's required, 8 is what's allowed, and 8 is what is contracted for.
Well, there's people sitting here that want to talk too, and I'm sure that they're not in agreement with you.
Well,
those are other people that have businesses out there too that are following the rules. I understand what happened to you wasn't probably the best thing, but it sounds to me like you got your money back from Troxel when it cost you to put the improvements in. And, they set those rules for a reason. And, if they're going to make everyone else in the complex live by the rules,
I think I would, unless there's any other specific question from Mr. Summers, not that you won't be able to address anything else, but I think, I have a feeling there's other folks that would like to speak, and we should probably give them an opportunity, because obviously that can weigh heavy, especially if they're adjacent users. So is there anyone else here to speak on behalf of this matter? State your name and sign in, please.
My name is Don Rowan, and I own an office condominium in the adjacent building, right next door. We're at 6011.
Your side or this side?
To the west. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have you share
It's a shared parking lot. It's continuous. Yeah, it's continuous.
Right.
And the only thing that delineates the two lots is striped down the middle from the blacktop seams when we do the code. Pardon me when I say that. You want my home address on this or my business?
Just an address. You know. I suppose there's a code requirement on that.
Okay. Scott, we've dealt with Scott before. I should say no, I don't need to sound that way, but we've had some problems with parking in our adjoining lot. And today, to this day, a lot of his tenants park in our lot right now today. On an average, there's probably 4 to 5 cars in our lot that are there almost on a permanent basis. And I think you know one of them is your wife. She parks right there every day in our lot. So it's a problem for us. We have 4 tenants in our building, and each one of us has walk-in trade. We each require about 5 to 6 spaces. We've got 23 spaces allotted to us. And at any given time, there's probably 4 or 5 other employees parking in our lot. Not to mention, on Mondays and Tuesdays, when the doctors are in, and we get a lot of the walk-in trade. And we came back from a meeting this morning, we had a condo meeting this morning with our owner of the building, and some of us had to park on the street. There just isn't enough parking spots. And I think your attorney, Scott, you bring up some good points. The problem is, what you're asking us to do is compound a mistake that was made years ago. You're asking the board to do that, you're asking us to swallow it. I understand you have a problem, but it's really, you're putting it on our doorstep now. And it's not our problem. This was a mistake that was made with Rich Troxel way back when. So now what you're asking the board to do, I think, if I read everything correctly, is bless that unholy union and go forward with yet another variance. And I don't think that's the way to go. We built a nice, we were some of the original tenants there, we built a nice little office complex with green space, and we're trying to put 10 pounds of business into a 5-pound bag. And maybe that's the difference between Sylvania and Perrysburg. Perrysburg seems a lot more wide open. Sylvania, we've got things on top of each other. And it's because of situations like this. So please think about that before you vote against it. We've got a problem right now, and I don't know how to do it, how to rectify it. And as far as policing it, how are you going to police it? How would you possibly police when it's snowing out? You're going to ask somebody to walk. It's not going to happen. And it doesn't happen today. Why are your occupants parking in a lot now? I don't know if they are. I can show you pictures. They're there every day. I took some pictures, and there's 3 spots that they're always parked in. This is the driveway. This is the last spot on our lot. These 3 spots are ours. These are employees. That's Mr. Porterfield's way. They're there almost every day.
And I don't want to start parking lot wars, but just, you can't take any more business in that lot. It's just too much.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Anybody else here to speak on behalf of this matter?
I am Hubert Weingartner, and my wife is Dr. Diane McCormick. She occupies and we own unit 4 in the same building. Most of the stuff that I wanted to address has already been addressed. And, we have similar concerns. I mean, we already have situations where we have patients that come in now and don't have parking. And oftentimes, again, it's people from the other building that occupy a number of our spaces. We have sufficient parking for the occupants in our building, but we don't have surplus parking at all. We just really don't. And that's why, like my wife and I will park in the street so that we can open up spaces for tenants. I'm sorry, for patients. Because, we can't really, how many patients can we afford to lose because they don't have a parking space? 10, 5? No. We can't afford to lose any patients. So, I can certainly sympathize with Mr. Porterfield's situation, and, I feel like he's already received some amount of remedy for it. And in some ways, it feels like he's asking for the double dip here. I got remedied for this basement space, and now I want to derive some more benefit. I understand the situation with his employees, but there is other office space available to Pennsylvania. 6% vacancy rate. I share the concern too that if down the road, if something happens and he decides to lease his building or expands his business, does he then have the ability to use all 5,000 square feet of his building and the number of employees that would entertain? We've got a situation now with parking that, and I agree that he can't police it. His wife was parking there today in the very first spaces in our streets. If anybody should understand what spaces belong to who, so I would think that she would know. That's all. I hope that you would consider rejecting the request.
Thank you.
My name is Helen Melanis. I'm the newest tenant. I just bought on August the 29th, Unit 3 at 6011. And I bought it because it's a great location. I'm new to Sylvania Township. And Bob Mack, the real estate agent, said there are approximately 5 spaces per tenant, which works for us. We have many elderly clients that are either wheelchairs, walkers, and so we would want them to be able to park right at the door, and the employees and myself would park in the back. We saw those photographs. And we did come back today, and I've been there for a week, and there are people parking in those spaces. So I get it that that's our problem, not yours. We have to police it. But I think the issue is it's already a problem. And I think that's what we want to leave you with. That if it's a problem today, it is unlikely that this is going to resolve any future problems. And I like being in Sylvania Township. I'm glad I don't have to pay any tax. And I'll sign it.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Any questions? Anybody? And is there anyone else here to speak on behalf of this matter? I think I will let you do.
My name is Dennis Kovic. I'm a tenant in the other half of the building and the owner of the building at 5965. I share this space, the immediate space, with the tenant as a supporter. I've been there since the beginning of the building. We built the building under the same understanding that parking would be available in the back. Obviously, that has not happened, as you've heard. I absolutely agree that there's a parking problem. But it seems to me that the problem can be partially relieved by granting the variance of additional 8 spaces, which will accommodate some of the employees to be able to park over there. Right now, the parking lot is often filled, and I agree that with Don, many times, people, including some of our patients, park in your lot because our lot is full. So I disagree with the idea that it compounds the problem. It seems to me that it partially alleviates the problem, and I very much am in favor of passing this ordinance.
Thank you. Yes. Sure. Let's have you go up there, please. That's okay.
The issue here is not whether or not they're permitted to park down the street, because they can park down the street if they want.
We would welcome them.
They can park in the street. I mean, they choose to park in our spaces versus walking 20 feet to the street. So, I mean, it's already an option for them. I mean, they don't need zoning's permission to park down the street, I assume. If they want to. If they want to contract with them, they can contract with them to park down the street. They want to. I mean, so, yeah, they can solve the problem of parking down the street. They don't need zoning permission to park down the street, I understand.
Right, you're saying if they want to enter an agreement for additional parking, there is nothing stopping that, but it's obviously not going to cover their occupancy for the basement. Yeah, so I assume that's his point. All right, so if it was strictly a parking issue for what they have now, they can pick up additional parking with this agreement. It won't satisfy the occupancy. Okay, any other questions, comments? Do we want to go into a session, or would you prefer to?
Session.
Yeah, we're going to, let me make sure I want to do this right now. So I believe we decided we want to do a, pardon?
I don't know what the need is.
I don't either.
No, that's what I was asking. So if there is no motion to go into session, then I guess we'll ask if there's no further discussion, then we'll go ahead and, we have a motion before us, and we can vote on the motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the application with the variance as requested, and also with the exception that's been requested by the Township Council that there not be a third-party lease agreement.
Anybody want to second that motion?
I'll second that.
So just to clarify, motion is to approve
Correct.
variances.
Both the variance and also the exception is recommended by our council.
Right. We have a second, I believe. Okay. Are there any conditions? Where's this? As presented? Okay, as presented. Are you ready?
Mr. Bullen?
No.
Mr. Amos?
No.
Mr. Hayes?
No.
Mr. Emsch?
No.
Mr.
No. So, wait a second. Any other, I believe we don't have any other business before us. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Mr. Halbert?
Yes.
Mr. Emsch?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
We are adjourned. Thank you. In terms of giving